Hello everyone, I'm Nightmare Nemo and welcome to Scary Town, the Goosebumps and Fear Street review show. This week we're going back to the classic Goosebumps series with the Big Bad Wolf, or the Werewolf of Fever Swamp, which is for a lot of people one of the big tent poles of the Goosebumps series. And a while ago I did see the TV episode, and I will say that for the most part, I think I would say maybe 90% of the TV episode is pretty much verbatim from the book. So if you don't have a chance to, or if you don't have the time to read the book, then you can check out the episode. And it's one of those two-parters, so it's pretty faithful as far as the adaptation. And so the main story here is Grady and his older sister Emily. Their parents are like these scientists who are doing these experiments on. They have like these deer that are like swamp deer, and so they're trying to get them acclimated to the what would be their natural environment with the swamp. So they move to this. I don't know what I don't think the town has a name, but they move to the swamp, and they keep the deer in a cage and stuff, and so all that kind of stuff is just kind of just to get them into the swamp. Really, it doesn't really play too much of a role in the book, and so it falls into the classic Goosebumps trope of, the kid has to move away from his friends in a school and stuff, and this is like just kind of whining like, oh, I wish I could see my old friends and stuff, and this new place sucks, and this new house sucks, and just being real whiny. And so for the first quarter of the book, it's just really just getting used to Grady being in this new surrounding, exploring the swamp, because he's a pretty adventurous kind of kid, and he's really outgoing, and he's just curious about the swamp, and he's told like these stories of like the reason why they call it Fever Swamp is because a long time ago people would get like this sickness while living in the swamp, and it would cause them to be like delirious and give them like a fever or sickness, and some people would just go like crazy, like banana pants, and so that's why they call it Fever Swamp. And one night he's just getting used to like all the sounds of animals in the night, and one night he hears like a scratching, a banging at the door, thinking it's like a wild animal, like a wolf, even though there's no wolves in the swamp, or like some crazy person trying to barge in. So he goes downstairs and investigates, opens the door, and it's just a stray dog, and he calls a stray dog Wolf, because Werewolf of Fear Swamp. So okay, so everything's going fine, and then Grady finds like the one kid, and like there's like 4 houses in this town, and like the only kid like around his age, and is Will, and he's just kind of like this normal looking kind of guy. Really doesn't have any distinctive personality traits or anything that really brings him out as far as a character. He's just kind of there, and he's just kind of like the sidekick character, just kind of, he's also interested in exploring the swamps, so they explore the swamps together. And then eventually, like halfway into the book, maybe a little bit more than halfway, there's this other kid who is an acquaintance of Will, and Cassie, and she's kind of crazy. She's a little bit more enthusiastic, and she's really there as a plot device, because she introduces the idea that there is a werewolf in the swamp. That's all she talks about is like werewolves, and it just has this weird fascination with werewolves. So she introduces the idea that there's a werewolf in the swamp, and there's also this crazy hermit that lives in a shack in the middle of the swamp, and he's self-sufficient, doesn't go into a town or anything, doesn't talk to anybody, so they automatically think the hermit's the werewolf. And then also another suspect is they also think the dog Wolf, he could be a werewolf, which makes no damn sense. Is I don't think I've ever heard of a dog turning into a werewolf, because that it really goes against the whole concept of werewolf. It doesn't make any sense. And so it kind of goes on that, like, all the bad stuff happens at night. There's a couple of nights where there's a full moon, finds like a rabbit outside that's like ripped open, and they go into the swamp and they find a bird that's just like ripped in half, and they suspect the hermit because they see the hermit walking away from them, and he's like carrying a sack, and he's got like what looks like blood on his shirt. So they think, okay, that means he's probably the werewolf. And I won't spoil the ending, but it's pretty funny, and I really feel, as far as the book, is that R.L. Stine likes to put on these twists in the book, and for better or worse, in order to preserve the shock of the twist, he has to like make it so there's not, especially in this book, maybe not so much the other ones, is there's really no foreshadowing that the person who ends up being the werewolf is a werewolf. And it really just comes out of nowhere. And like the last, I would say like 20-25 pages, you find out who the werewolf is. And it kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's just like, oh no, I didn't expect this person to be it. And it really doesn't really follow up too much on like why this person is the werewolf or whatever, and it doesn't really go into too much detail. But I mean, it's perfectly fine for a Goosebumps book. It's pretty strong. It's pretty exciting in that it kind of leaves a lot of things, like there's this stuff with the dog, because the parents don't really like the dog. The dog is like 100 pounds, like this really big dog, and there's a lot of shade thrown onto the dog because they assume like the dog is the one that's killing all these animals and stuff, and you can't control it. And then of course they're thinking like the dog might attack the deer eventually. So it's a pretty strong book. I don't think it's as strong as a pure werewolf story, because like I say, like the idea that there's a werewolf at all is not even introduced until like more than halfway into the book. So it spends a little bit too much time building up things. The relationships with Grady and Will, which, I mean, they kind of explore the swamp and stuff, but I don't know, it feels like it's building too much, especially with the dog, and it seems kind of silly that the dog is suspected to be a werewolf, but whatever. So, I mean, it's remembered for a reason. It's a pretty good Goosebumps book. It's just not as strong as a werewolf story as I wanted it to be. But yeah, as far as like the negatives, like I say, there's really no, like, the shock of who the werewolf is comes out of nowhere. And the ending, while pretty silly, is kind of cool in a way. And it's not one of those really dumb ones where it's just like, it's like, why did this happen or whatever. So it's actually pretty cool. So that's all I got for this week and the Werewolf Fever Swamp. So definitely check it out. Alright, see you guys next time.